layer, the introduction layer that we've been talking about so far is really tapping into a lot of big esoteric fundamental principles that are like kind of can seem abstract, even though, as we've discussed, they really do play into our lives fairly regularly. But I wanted today like wrap up what we've covered and kind of move forward so that next week could start with Chava, because I really would not, I mean, we could spend the entire year learning about the moon, and like I told you, but it may come back up. So moving forward, we talked about how certain entities came into being, not just within creation, but systems. We discussed a deceptive reality where our perspective of the world as we see it right now may be different than, paradigm shifts or perspective shifts. Hold on, let me just shut my WhatsApp because it's going to keep doing that, right? Boom, there we go. Makes all this background noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. It might have been from my end.
No, it was mine. It was my WhatsApp. It was my WhatsApp that was making. You're fine. You're good.
Oh, the garbage.
Enjoy the fresh air. It's actually magnificent today. The weather is divine. Okay. So then we talked about that. Basically, what we're really discussing this fundamental idea of a mashpia and a makabel, a giver and a receiver, and how that parallels both with the moon and the moon being the receiver of the light, the sun giving the light. And we discussed how actually that parallels to female and male. We discussed Shemesh being a masculine, Levana being feminine. We discussed how that in our modern consciousness, idea of being a receiver can be uncomfortable, though we all know in mature relationships, we understand the significance and importance of being a receiver, right? That in order to have vulnerability or connection or be intimate emotionally, physically, psychologically with someone, there has to be that exchange. We also talked about how there was the moon's perspective from the created consciousness, and God's perspective. God didn't see the receiver as a diminishment of light or diminishment in importance or significance, whereas the receiver, the moon and the sun, it was the moon's perspective, like, whoa, I can't be that way. And then we also talked about how God said, Lechi, go be involved in getting bigger and smaller. And really, we discussed additionally how the discrepancy, how this brought into being and into our consciousness in our world, a kind of entity where there's a discrepancy, right? There's a balance. And we discussed even more significantly how when King David questioned God, like, why is there, rich and poor? Or why aren't things equal? And God said, because it's meant to be that way. Who will be the giver? Who will be the receiver, right? Who will be the compassionate one? Who will be that? So all of these we can certainly understand are important. We also discussed how this diminishment of the moon is a temporary reality. And we discussed how in the time of Mashiach, briefly, we started this, and that's where we'll go. The time of Mashiach, the feminine energy will rise to the top. Feminine energy won't be, it will be very clear what feminine energy can accomplish. And it's, again, male and female are both created in the image of God, right? So what I want to go with, and really this is to empower us with tools. So what I want to go with is I want to discuss how this applies to us in 2020, because all this is great, philosophically, mystically, spiritually, whatever you want to say, right? But like in 2020, what does that mean to me as a woman, right? Or what does that mean to me and my personal journey? So in order to do that, of course, we're going backwards a little bit in the journey. And so we're going to look at, I already mentioned that in the time of Mashiach is when we're going to reach the state where hold on a second, I just realized my hand up, 1 second. We're going to enter this state where, there we go. We're going to enter this state where feminine energy rises, and it's not that it rises like, oh my gosh, it's its own thing. It rises to a place of where it's able to see its strength as well. So it from the created consciousness, right? Because to God doesn't look at male one way and female another way. It's really the creators, like the created entities, okay, that see things differently. And so here we go. I'm going to pull up this handout. We're going to move forward. I want to show you a story that comes from this book of Bereshit, and it's actually where we first start hearing about the story that defines where Mashiach will come from. We know Mashiach is Mashiach ben David, right? We always say Mashiach, according to fundamental principles of Judaism, that we will come to a time where Mashiach will arrive and Mashiach will declare that, iPhone is entered. we'll usher in an era of peace and where things kind of return to the way they were meant to be, right? Where the moon is shining in its way, the sun is shining in its way. So let's look at this story of Yehuda and Tamar, and in it, it discusses the birth of twins, Peretz and Zerach. So we'll look over here, and it came to be at the time she was giving birth that behold, there were twins in her womb, and it came about when she gave birth that he, the infant, stretched out his hand. The midwife took and bound a crimson thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." Which one's first? One kind of stuck its hand outside, and that's when the midwife put a string on, which baby's baby A, right? People have identical twins, they label them. We didn't have that problem. Our triplets were all look the same. Look very different. So we didn't have that issue, but people do that, right? How to identify which one's first. And then go back, and it came about as he was drawing back his hand, behold, his brother emerged and said, "With what strength you have asserted yourself." And he, Yehuda the father, named him Peretz. So there was one that was about to be born, drew his hand back, and the other one came out first. Fascinating birth story. Wasn't present, so I can't comment on it. Rashi's commenting on it. What does Rashi say? You have strengthened yourself. This means you brought strength upon yourself. The fact that you were born first brought the strength. Afterwards, his brother emerged, the one upon whose hand had the crimson thread, and his name was Zerach. So one is Peretz, and one is Zerach. This is a very confusing, strange story. And what does it have to do with us in 2020? And what does it have to do with the moon? And what does it have to do with femininity? Like, where does this tie into our reality? So moving forward.
And where does this story come from?
Bereshit. Here, Bereshit Vayeshev, Parshat Vayeshev. It's in the regular text. Isn't it funny how we know the story of Joseph in the Technicolor sweater and we never hear this story? Isn't it interesting how certain things get more PR and less? Now, it happens. You never heard the story.
I mean, I went to yeshiva for 12 years. I'm sure
I think they skipped this story in yeshiva a lot because what happened was the relationship with Yehuda and Tamar was complicated. So they just were like, oh, let's stay away from this. This is too sensitive of an issue to deal with young children. Fascinating left. I want to tell you something. An educator went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he said, how should I teach the story? And I'm going to actually send you guys a link to look in more of the story if you want to, because I just don't want to spend a ton of time in it because then we won't. I want to wrap up this portion.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't want to like. It's a fascinating story, and if when we get maybe to tomorrow, I'll send you a link afterwards. I'm going to put it up to look at later. Okay. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go back to what we're doing. Basically, when a teacher went to the Rebbe and said, how should I explain the story of Yehuda and Tamar? They're young kids. How are they going to understand the details of the story? Parshas Vayeshev. I'm looking for the one from Chabad because I saw a really good article that really gave it to us. And the Rebbe said, what's the problem with the story? And he says, well, their relationship began under questionable circumstances, right? And the Rebbe said, it's Torah. And if it's Torah, it's God's will and God's wisdom. And their issue isn't the story. The issue is your way of seeing the story. And by the way, can we not understand how often in life we see things a certain way and we add our own lens or our own filter to a story? Look at what's going on in our country, right? So we certainly understand Yehuda and Tamar, the twins, and I'm going to send this link to you because he basically here. So it's a very interesting story of twins. Look over here. But in this case, they were not the most exalted circumstances. Tamar was originally married to Yehuda's eldest son. Okay, so and then married the next son, and then didn't have children, and then married Yehuda. So this is a story that a lot of educators did not share in yeshivas. You know why? They didn't know how to address it. And when this teacher came to the Rebbe and said, how do I teach this story to my students? And the Rebbe said, it's Torah. There's no question. Okay. I'm going to share the link with you after I got it because I don't want to forget to do it. I'll share it with you in our WhatsApp group very briefly because It's I'll share it in. Where would you rather me share it, in the WhatsApp group or in the chat right here?
WhatsApp group.
Okay. I'm gonna do it right now, otherwise I may forget because we all know how that works, right? Okay.
Yeah, because the chat stuff goes away as soon as we end the.
Right. So Sarah, you understand why it was more of maybe a story you didn't get introduced to?
I'm really eager to read it.
Right, and actually do research. It's a fascinating story. And again, I would love to, like, maybe when we get to that sequence in the stories of life, we'll get there. I'm just gonna share it. I'm gonna share this right here. Hold on a second. There we go. Perfect. Done. Closing. Onward. Okay. So what's going on with this story? Now here comes a commentary, Rabbeinu Bechia, and he really sheds light on this whole story because it's such a bizarre story, and he actually understands explains from a Kabbalistic lens what's really going on here. So Rabbeinu Bechia was one of the Spanish Rishonim, and a lot of what he spoke about had a lot of Kabbalah. Now the Rishonim were after the destruction of the temple during the period of, like, think of Maimonides. Rambam was also what, like 11th to 15th century. That was when this commentary comes from. Okay, so what does Rabbeinu Bechia discuss? He's trying to explain, and he has a lot, because of this, a lot of the Spanish commentators were a lot of their teaching was very heavy in Kabbalah. So it had a lot of deeper layers to understanding stories, because this is a bizarre story. A baby's half born, then a string, then another baby draws his hand in, and another baby comes out, and you're stronger, you're Peretz, you're Zerach. What's their names? What's even more interesting?
Why do we need to know all this?
Exactly. So Sarah, you're getting cut off. Maybe you're walking away from your Wi-Fi, but why on earth do you and I need this story? Right?
Oh,
and we know what we've learned when we've learned so far Torah, one of the fundamental principles we learned about learning Torah, like, right, when we say how to study a passage in Torah, is that every word and every letter and every addition to the story is not extra. So if this kind of seemingly interesting / strange story is being documented in the Torah, there is a reason. And why are we studying it here about these twins that were born under fascinating circumstances? Okay. Anyone want to read? Does anyone want to read? Do you see, or do you want me to read?
It's too small for me to read.
Okay, I'll read. Sorry about that. Okay, it's okay. And you're also on a phone. So that's fine. I'll read. Okay. Lara or Judith, feel free to at any point to jump in, okay? So Vayikrosh Moshe. So he's commenting on why this kid was called Zerach. Like, such a strange thing. We don't even know, we hardly hear these things. The name Zerach means shine. Okay? Shine. Symbolizing
Sun?
wisdom. Yes. Where the name Peretz, interruption, symbolizes the moon. The sun shines uninterruptedly daily, whereas the moon, seems to be ineffective towards the end of the month, right? When it's super small and at the beginning of the month, this light, you look up in the sky, it's not so present. Its light is not, it's interrupted, okay? The kingdom of David HaMelech, actually comes from Peretz, whose dynasty symbolized the moon with ups and downs. We know that the moon's orbit is completed every 29 days. This is why you will find that there are 29 righteous people that descend from King David, listed in the Bible from the time of Peretz until King David. Till the end of King David's, dynasty. So it's saying, oh, that's interesting. There's 29 days, there's 29 giants in the dynasty. And who comes from David HaMelech? We know, we said earlier, Mashiach ben David. So these twins were born under very fascinating circumstances. And from them, without that relationship, Mashiach wouldn't exist. Mashiach is when we say this deceptive reality of masculine and feminine being different, not different, but unequal or unbalanced, will be harmonized. Okay? When the Torah reports God's directives, now it's going to go back to a little bit of understanding how this ties into the moon and the sun. Vayihi ar, let there be light. Vayihi ar, and there was light. The repetition of the word ar Again, repeating, so there's something going on. Why is it saying R twice? Why can't see Vayihi Har? And there was light. Why does it God Yihi Ar? There should be light, Vayihi Ar, and there was light. God's creating everything, right? Why does it say that? In the narrative of creation, that's not how the story goes. So why uniquely when it comes to the light? We're trying to understand. In that directive, the report is that it had been carried out, suggesting that there were two kinds of light. It says R twice, seemingly two kinds of light. You do not find the subject of this directive repeated when the Torah reports that God created anything else in any other day. In the report, in the report of the directives of Torah on other days, you'll only find Vayihi Kain. So normally it says, let there be water, and then it says Vayihi Kain, and it was. In all the rest of things, let the fish form the water, Vayihi Kain, and it was. When it comes to R, it says Vayihi Yar, there should be light, Vayihi Yar, there was light. You understand the question here that Rabbeinu Bechia is wondering? So,
Okay.
In the Torah's report, the directives of God, Israel, you should realize that though the Torah appears to speak of two kinds of light, the meaning is not that there were actually two entirely different created kinds of light. What it means at this light embodied two sources of power and energy. Meaning, is God separate from one light or the other? He has different modes. We already said, according to God, there's no difference in the light of the moon or the light of the sun. They're both light, they're both important, they're both significant. It was the moon that made a complaint. It was the moon that said, this is not okay, right? What means is that the light embodied two sources of power. One of these forces is essentially male, and the other one is essentially female. The creation of the original light, however, was the product of a single source of energy. And omnipotent God had one source of energy, one source of light. So it's like I have energy coming into my building or my house, and it's going into my chandelier up here, right? Okay, into my chandelier, yeah? And then I have one that's going into my kitchen, my little nightlight. It's the same source of energy, the same source of light. How it manifests itself is differently. This chandelier is big, right? And this chandelier sheds more light. And the little nightlight that I have in my bathroom that plugs in, less light. Is it a different source? No. The moon and the sun have the same force of energy. How it manifests itself is different. The original light later on enables the sun, the moon, and the stars to be derived from it and to be divided. The original light was independent of any physical matter. Sunlight is not. It requires the sun, right? You can't say there's sunlight and then there's no sun. It's like my chandelier. I have light for my chandelier, but no chandelier. That makes no sense. The energy that's coming in has to be channeled into something. So here it's channeled. This godly divine energy called R, light, is divided between the moon, between the stars, between the sun, but they're different types. And they're not separated from the entity. The original light later on enables the sun, the moon, the stars. It requires the sun, the physical body, in order to be dispensed. The sun, here's interesting, was endowed with male properties of the original light, whereas the moon was endowed with female properties of the original light. So godliness is not male or female. Is God a guy or a girl? Depends when, depends how. If we're created in the image of God and we're male and female, then God is both male and female. Seeing that the kingdom, the house of David, is derived from Peretz. Peretz, it turns to be likened to the moon, interrupted up and down, 29 days, 29 generations of the moon. The sages formulated the word David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. We all know this, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. This comes from the sages. What were they saying? The kingdom of David is alive and endures. And we actually recite this David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim every single month when we do what? When we bless the new moon. Because the moon is connected to the kingdom of David, which is connected to Peretz, which is connected by creation to the feminine divine energy in this world. It's not a different source like the energy coming into my house. It's just manifests differently and depends on what vessel it is connected to. Okay? Very, very interesting. Without that feminine energy, that Peretz, there is no Mashiach. Mashiach is the one who's going to usher in the era where there's an alignment and a synchronization and ultimate, we talk about equality, real equality, where the feminine energy could rise and take its place. Okay? we're going to go a little bit quickly, look quickly over here. In the monthly blessing, Kiddush Lavana, when we bless the moon, may be your will, Lord, my God, the God of my ancestors, to fill the flaw of the moon so that it no longer is diminished state. So we're acknowledging that this diminished state the moon is in during this time where the world is in a gullus era, where feminine energy is not rising top, where there is, a giver and a receiver, there is a poor and a rich, there is paradoxical entities. We're saying, Hashem, we want to get to this era of Mashiach. May the light of the moon be the light of the sun. And like the light of the 7 days of creation as it was before it was diminished, as the verse states, the two great luminaries, then may there be fulfilled for us verses. They shall seek the Lord, the God, and David, their king. Amen. And then we say, David Melch Yisrael Chai V'Kaim. So in case you ever want to know where David Melch Yisrael came from, now you know. It's a prayer said when we are blessing the moon and we are saying to the moon, we are in hopes of the time that David Melch Yisrael, the Mashiach, that comes, Mashiach-based David, that is alive and well, will usher in this era where the moon is no longer seen differently. And really, it's about how the moon sees itself, because remember, God did not see it as a different source. Interestingly enough, I'm going to end up with one last nikuda. There is a very famous Mimer, Hasidic Discourse. And in this discourse, it discusses masculine energy and feminine energy. And it compares, if you remember in the past, we talked about the 10 divine energies. We talked about, that there's 4 worlds. There's godliness in this world that's only God. And it trickles down into each world, okay? The world of emanation, where there is the world of only God, the world of action. We're in the world of action, right? Where the further away from the source we get, the more godliness is concealed. There's a world where angels exist, okay? It's not physical worlds, okay? We're in a world where godliness is more concealed, where we see differences, right? And we can all understand that day to day. We look around, we see differences, right? We see haves and have-nots. We see smart and not so smart. I'm giving that, you understand. I don't have to give examples, we all understand that. So this world, now each of these worlds, how does it get its energy from godliness? We said there's 10 divine energies that every single one of us are made of and everything in the world has. Starting with Chachma Bina Das, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and then the intellectual, the emotive, and the end one is Malchus. Now Malchus is usually translated as sovereignty, royalty, nobility. But how does that translate to us? And interestingly enough, Malchus is compared to the female. And what happens is in each of the worlds, I feel like I should draw this almost, okay, just because I feel like this will maybe make it a little more clear. Let me see if I could do this quickly. Let me share a whiteboard, right? I have to stop share this and I have to share a whiteboard. Just give me a second so I can explain. Whiteboard.
You were getting very good at this stuff.
I'm trying, okay? So let's say there is, let's hit whiteboard, let's note, okay. I don't know if this is going to be clear, but we'll try. Okay, where the top one is where there's just God alone, then comes, and we're over here. We're in world number 4, the lowest world where there's, and as the revelation or the awareness of godliness goes down, our awareness goes up, which we can all understand. Now in it, there is these 10 divine. Okay, let's just do this. Oh, it's not working. Sorry, I'm not getting so good at this. I changed my mind. This is not really working. Let me just see if I can find actually instead. Sorry about this. This is not so clear right now because that was not going to work. Let's see if this works. Let's see if this works, if I could pull it up. Okay, let's see if we can get this. I'm really, okay. I think this actually will work. I think this will work. Hold on. If I can figure out how to open it, open image in a new tab. Let's see if we can get it big enough. Oh, come on. It's actually going to probably, I wonder if this is going to be more confusing, but we'll try it. Let's try this and see if this works. Appreciate your patience, by the way. I'm not going to lie. Okay. Here are the 4 worlds. You see a red world, a blue world, a yellow world, a green world. Let's disregard the colors. Okay. The world of existence, Atzilus, world of emanation, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, the world of action. It's really hard to see the wording on this. I don't know why. Over here, it's so clear. I'm going to try one more way, see if I save the document if it works. Ooh, yay, much more clear, right? Do you see it? Okay. All right. There's 4 worlds. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. In these worlds, there is the world of existence, Atzilus, the world of emanation. That's God, just God alone. Bria, the world of creation. Yetzira, the world of formation. Asiya, the world of action. We're in this bottom, the lower world, the physical universe, nature, where we are. Angels and paradise, archangels and 7 heavens, and Adam Kadmon, which is just God and God alone. Okay. You'll see Keser is a crown, so it's on top. It relates to kingship. On the other hand, each one of these has Chachma Bina Das, Chesed Gvura Tferes, Netzach Hod Yesod, and then comes Malchus. So there's a crown on top. There's this one, and then imagine a pipeline that's going down from. Imagine this is an apartment building, and there's 4 different floors, and right here is where the heater is, and the heater needs to bring down the energy. Okay, to each of these apartments. It has to filter down from here, and the pipes are going down, and then it's affecting this floor, then it's going down, it's affecting this floor, it's going down, it's affecting this floor, it's going down, it's affecting this floor. Okay, this on top is gaining the energy from, let's say, the power fuel thing. But because this heater on top of the roof, and you see this in Israel, the heater's on top of the roof, because the heater's on top of the roof and it's getting, let's say, light from the sun or from the power grid, it has what to give each of these worlds. The Keter or Malchus, kingship, is actually feminine. A female receives and then she gives. She has receives a seed and then she develops and gives birth to what? Not just a result, okay, a plant in the ground, to something that then can give birth. It's a very abstract Kabbalistic concept, so we'll do the best we can, and then we'll move forward and we'll see how throughout learning it will pop up again. Even if it doesn't fully resonate today, that's okay. Because the first time you're learning this is like, whoa, what's going on here? So in essence, Malchus, a king cannot be the king without, meaning if the heater's on the roof, but there's no pipes to connect downward into these apartments, the heater can't give heat. On the other hand, the heater needs energy from something else in order to give the heat. The female, on the one hand, Keser Malchus sits on top because it receives, each one of these worlds receives energy from the world above. So the female, and you see how Malchus is on the bottom again? Malchut is kingship. So on one hand, it's on the top, and on the other hand, it's on the bottom. So on the one hand, it's the receiver, but then it gives. Fascinatingly enough, when a woman is about to give birth to a baby, what do we say? She's crowning. She's giving birth to potential, to the next generation, to the continuity of mankind, which is why us women were endowed with that. Because in order to be, you have to be a receiver. When you receive, so there's a fascinating parallel we talk about in the month of Elul when we talk about God as a king. Why does God the king need us? Why does he need us to anoint him, to blow the shofar, because a king, if I set myself up on my front lawn, I say I'm the king of the front lawn, I'm the king of delusion, I'm not the king of anything. A king needs subjects. So really what happens is the king affects the subjects and the subject affects the king. It's a cycle. So the woman is a receiver, but then the woman gives birth and creates more with it. The moon is a receiver, but then the moon brings light with it. It doesn't disappear. It has an entity. So you could say, oh my goodness, as women, do we want to be receivers? And God says in his infinite wisdom, by being the receiver, that's when you shine and you can give more. I see there's a question. Go for it. Oh, ask that out loud, Sarah.
It's just a saying in leadership seminars that we go, how do you define a leader? Who's a leader? And everybody comes up with, oh, this, that, and the leader.
You're cutting out again. So could you say it again? Because it was so important. Sorry.
Okay. Here. This better? Am I?
Yeah. Excellent, actually.
Okay, back inside. Yeah. Just in leadership seminars, there always arises the question of how do you define leadership? Who is a leader? And people come up with all these traits and attributes and everything. And in the end, the bottom line is a leader is someone with followers.
Yeah, that's a basic definition, right? You may have great qualities and great traits, but if you have no followers, my friend was talking about this, Kanye West is running for president. It doesn't help, right? You could want to run for president, but if you want to be a leader, you need to have people who are willing to follow you. And not that I want to go political, because we're not going political. So not everyone has enough politics in their life. It's hard enough. So in a sense, and this goes to the next text that we're learning, and I understand, by the way, these are abstract. I'm not saying they're not. It's abstract concept, but we'll see how later it will pop up. Okay, so now back to our female and our male. And I actually really am glad we found that diagram, because I hope it explains a little bit about the 4 worlds. Each of those 4 worlds have those 10 divine energies, and they filter in. So the Malchus, the bottom one on each world, is really the crown on the world above, right? It's the funnel from the world above. It receives from the world above and gives to that world, and then it receives and gives, receives and gives. That's what women do. Without women, my mother would say, without women, the world wouldn't exist. Humanity wouldn't exist. We receive and we give. Right? And how many of us relate to that, being givers and receivers? And we're always in a giving mode as women, Okay, now here, let's just try to understand it. Spheres hamalchus nikram melachta. There are 10 creative divine attributes and manifestations of God called sephirot. These are chachma, bina, da'at, chesed, gvur, tiferet, netzach, hod, yisod, malchus. We talked about this extensively in Tanya class, okay? 3 intellectual, 7 emotive that drive action. The latter 7 midot, emotive attributes, they are sources of and parallel to the 10 powers of the human soul. Okay, just as a man reveals himself through his attributes or his garments, through speech and deed, similarly God reveals himself through his attributes as sphirot. Okay, we express ourselves through 10 sphirot, thought, speech, action. We through all these entities, someone is more loving, compassionate, intellectual, academic, noble, driven, whatever. They are actually manifestations of God. Our personality, think of our personality traits, come from somewhere. Okay, the Zohar goes on to explain Malchus sovereignty is actually called a queen. The Zohar states a king without a queen is neither a king nor is he great. The essential factor in the union, basically you need the masculine dimension and the feminine dimension. Literally, the Kabbalistic, okay, we're going to skip this for a second because it's going to take us in a different direction. This is emphasized by the Torah statement, male and cake. So now it's going back to when God created male and female. Zachar unukeva bara osam vayavarech osam elokim. So first it says God created man in the image of God. But tzelem elokim na'aseh adam. And it says first that God created man in his image. And I actually want to add this to my handout because I think this is really, really, really important piece that's not here. In the narrative of creation, it describes how first God created a male and female entity, then he split them, and then it says Zachar and Nekeva bara osam, and then it says Vayivarech otam. God only blessed Adam after Adam, masculine, feminine, androgynous being, was male and female, separate, different, and unique. In the Torah account of creation of man and woman, it is only after male and female he created them that God blesses them. Man alone, meaning masculine and feminine, was unworthy of God's blessing. As a matter of fact, God said, Lo tov adam liot levad. It's not good for man to be alone. The reason for this is because the transmitter, the mashpia, cannot realize his purpose, have children, be fruitful, and multiply without a recipient, makabel, which is why what's the first mitzvah that God gives to Adam? Be fruitful and multiply. Now that you're a separate entity, there's male and female, now you can inhabit the world. Now you could recreate. Now you can actually parallel God in creation. So too, similar process occurs in the relationship between every mashpia, transmitter, and makabel, receiver. Actually, a teacher is considered a mashpia. Why is a teacher mashpia? I would love to teach. If I get on Zoom and no one's here, I have no one to teach. So no matter what, and I'm sure many of you in your lives, you could think, you want to give as a grandmother. If you don't see your grandchildren, you can't be a grandmother. Yes, you're still a grandmother, but you can't actualize that potential, right? Or if you're a therapist, you don't have a patient, you may be a therapist in name, but you can't actualize that. So in order for the king, or in order for the mashpia, the giver of the light, if the sun wanted to give light, but the moon couldn't receive the light, there'd be no light at night, and the sun couldn't fulfill its potential. So what's real? A woman too can only procreate when she receives from a man, and yet when she births, it's exponentially greater than what she received. She received some cells, some DNA, and now there's a human. And not only a human, but a human who hopefully could recreate, bring more life and more souls into the world. The Talmud said, for my students, I receive the most, right? We said that, we discussed this extensively, that ultimately we learn, we give more when we are able to pass things on. So, and I think it's a great example. Like last week, I logged onto class and I was able to learn, I wasn't able to teach. And I think we could all think of that examples in our own parallel life. And that's okay, that's how life works, right? Okay, now let's just try to understand how this actually affects us. Ready? Let's try to tie it in together, because I really promise that we're going to finish with this today. It's very, very hard in 2020 to really, really appreciate what it means to be a receiver. Because during our reality, we look at the person who receives tzedakah as nabach, poor them. But really, when someone receives tzedakah, what's actually happening is they're actually helping the other person become a giver. Right? So look over here. It discusses the light of what in the Yeshayahu, when it discusses the prophecy of Mashiach. And I'll wrap this up into practical takeaways in the end. I know this is a little bit of a journey, but we'll wrap it up to the practical takeaways. And the light of the moon shall be like the light of the sun. And Radak says, which is a very famous commentary, more of the light of the moon. Most commentators refer this verse to the future, to the times of Mashiach. What is that talking about? The moon saw a weakness in the fact that we can't both be equal. God said, go diminish yourself. The moon complained. God compromised and gave the moon all sorts of comforts. Then finally the moon wasn't satisfied, and God said, every Rosh Chodesh, when we bless the moon, I will say, I'll bring an offering, the new moon, to compensate you. Even more so, we said every single Rosh Chodesh when we're blessing the moon, not Rosh Chodesh, but when any Kiddush Levana, when we're blessing the moon, we acknowledge the fact that the moon has been diminished, parrots interrupted, and that the source of the time when the moon will kind of maximize its potential back to its full reality is a time of Mashiach. So really, this is a journey for each and every one of us. There have been a lot of shifts in this world where we could really understand being present, stepping back and being a receiver, drawing into yourself and working deep within. Really, the moon will always be a makabel, because the moon really, by being a makabel or a receiver, the moon is actually teaching us to work on how we see ourselves in our own mind. Because the moon saw itself as less than. God did not see the moon as less than. Just like God doesn't see, when he talks to King David about the person who has to receive, doesn't see that person as less than. He says it's in order to give the giver space to be a giver. So the diminishment is really kind of from our perspective. Okay? the diminishments from our perspective and from a global perspective where we don't see things the way their potential is. Let's look at the last quote, and then from there we'll wrap it up. The moon, when she was first created, was a glistening jewel. She did not merely reflect light, but transformed it and brought it out its inner beauty, much as precious stones glisten with a secret hidden light all its own. In her own way, the moon was greater than the sun, for the sun only shines from its surface, whereas the moon shone from its inner essence. The sun holds the light that extends outwards, whereas the moon holds a light of being. And so we will be once again, and much more so in the time to come, we'll transform the world with Torah Mitzvot. So I want to focus on one big idea as this really massive takeaway. Number one is females were compared to the moon. We wane, we wax, we are receivers of light, but from that light we can do incredible things. A lot of how we perceive ourselves and our strengths actually comes from within. The moon's feeling of inadequacy was from within. To God, there was no inadequacy. God created them both equal from the same energy source, just like me saying, oh, this chandelier is not as good as the nightlight. No, the nightlight forms its function. The chandelier forms its function. I don't want a chandelier in my bathroom at night. I want a nightlight in my bathroom. And I don't want a nightlight in my dining room during the day or at night. I want a chandelier. Each one having its own unique function. Really, this dichotomy had to exist. Because what is all this charade? Why couldn't God do this? In order for you and I to really come into ourselves as women and fill our place in the world where we acknowledge the equal source, and yet we are empowered by what makes us different and unique. We need to be our light. We need to stop worrying about other people's lights. We need to stop worrying about being less than. We need to focus on the light that we have that's unique. There's a role to Malchus. The Malchus receives and the Malchus gives. Shabbat is a day of Malchus, kingship, queen. We talk about the Shabbat queen. We talk about L'chadodi, come my bride, my queen. L'krat kala, right? My queen, my bride. Because Shabbat is about where we draw everything back in and we reap the benefits of all our work during the week. So what's our work? Our work is not to try to be the sun, not to try to be someone else, to try to be someone who could receive and who then can bring light into the world with what I received. And the truth is, it's effort, really, if I have to tie it down as women, in really deeply connecting to the idea that we are enough. We're enough. I don't need to be a man to be valuable. I don't need to be someone other than how Hashem made me in order to count in life. And really the exercise of the moon is to teach us that we are created as receivers and we are enough in who we are. Now, you want to know a time where we're going to all be able to tap into our inner potential and be comfortable in our own skin? The days of Mashiach. When the deceptive reality of us seeing things as different as bad will fade away. And each piece of the puzzle will fall into place the way it was intended. And that's the takeaway from all of this, in a sense. Realizing we're, number one, not created. We're created equal but different. We're created with our own unique divine energy that is meant to be in this world. We're created with, and we discussed extensively how while the moon receives, it gives. We as women, we receive, we give. And not to focus on what I don't have, but to focus on who I am. Dig deep as a woman. What do I bring to the table? How can I utilize the gifts within, or the things I've received in life, to bring more light into the world? And not to focus on where I'm not. Basically, an exercise is I'm good enough being who I am. That's a very deep lesson, and we're going to see it again and again. And I bet we can even find in our own lives how it parallels. So we're at 7 minutes. We're at a little bit towards the end. And I want to stop here because next week we're going to start with Chava. And I will say this lays the framework later into why the women, we'll touch upon this, why the women did not participate in the the sin of the golden calf, whereas the men did. The only two that did not were and I said this last time as a mistake, the house of Yehuda, which is why from there came Mashiach. That was one of their rewards. And the women. And our reward was Rosh Chodesh as a holiday. And every month, Rosh Chodesh is a feminine holiday. But now when you understand Rosh Chodesh is a feminine holiday, remember it's a lesson in how to receive and give and how to be enough. And it's the women's infinite wisdom of how they were created that they did not participate. And it's why they received Rosh Chodesh. God could have given them any day of the year, any week. And Rosh Chodesh is when God says, I see you, I understand, you feel diminished. Don't worry, we're going to get a time where David Melchizedek, the house of David will come, it's alive, and then we will have an era of Mashiach where your light will be able to shine in your light as equal, not being someone else. And I think that as women, I don't know, I think this is a life work. I'm enough. Well, my camera just went. Do you see my camera? Like, sorry, I don't know why my camera is doing that. How many of you relate to this notion of being enough? How many of you constantly, I don't know, for me, I always feel like I need to be more, do more, always. Does anyone relate to that?
Well, I guess from like my perspective, like, because I can't have kids because of my cancer. So coming from a Catholic religion, also the whole thing's like you gotta have kids. So I always felt kind of like I don't belong. So I don't know. I had kind of like, so what is in the path for somebody like me?
Amazing.
To accept, and I definitely I don't feel like I'm enough a lot of times.
Okay, so Lara, you touched upon something. I'm so glad you brought it up because I think that as women, we're constantly defining ourselves. I am someone's daughter, I'm someone's wife, I'm someone's mother. And there's a lot of messages we get from society that this is how you equal. Now with this background, you're like, oh, it makes sense. This is not just about birthing children. This is about you showing up with your own feminine energy and saying, I don't need to be a man. Does a man feel they're less than because they can't, right? Why would you feel less than? Because that's how God actually set out a path for you, and this is part of your story. Now, you didn't say, like, sign me up, this is what I want. Hashem chose this for you. And if God chose this for you, it's not a mistake. Now, it doesn't mean it's not painful, it's not difficult, but what the lesson from the moon we're learning is, and God keeps saying, you're enough, you're enough. You think you're less than. No, I'm telling you, you're enough. Every month I'm going to remind you, I recognize you, I see you, I hear you, and you're going to get to a point in life where you know you're enough, where you know you're able to shine with who you are. And it requires a level of humility for all of us in our lives to say, wow, I'm enough. I don't have to be someone else. I don't have to be the moon. I need to be me. And this is deep work we have to do as women. Deep work. And I cannot tell you how many women I speak to, young girls that start from a very young age that feel they're not enough. We have to start showing up a little bit differently in our lives and saying, I am who I am. And that's what I think we get a lot of confusing. There's a lot of noise. We got to go dig deep within ourselves. Say, God created me a female. God created me the way he wanted me. God created me with my own path and my own story and my own thing. And God says, I see you're sad about it. I see you're uncomfortable about it. And God tries to appease the moon, right? But God says, to me, you're the two great lights. You're not different. You're coming from the same source. So your divine story is your story. Mine is mine. And no one, it's like saying, well, I don't want to be a nightlight. Well, God made me a nightlight. I don't want to be a chandelier. God made me a chandelier, right? I'm using that chandelier. I'm not saying a nightlight is one and a chandelier is another. It's a silly analogy, but I think to me it pops up as something that's so like clear, right? It's like you're you. You know how in cooking you need the sugar and the salt, right? Even in a dessert, you need a little bit of salt to keep the balance. I think that it's within us. We have to really do some deep work where there's a level of acceptance and humility See, had the moon not gone in with this complex, things wouldn't have been as it is. Now, we understand from later texts that the moon had the order of the world needed this give and take, right? So ask yourself, Lara, aside from physically birthing, what else can you birth in life, right? Talents, gifts, roles you can fill, light you can bring into the world. It's more than physical birth. You know, I have the Chabad Rebbetzin in Montana, and it may be interesting for you. You could check, she has a blog. At 25 or 26, she found that there's no way she'll ever have biological children. She ended up going on the path of adoption. She adopted 5 different children. Fascinating story. She has a blog. She speaks about her journey. And she describes how a lot of that journey was really getting over what she perceived her life needed to be. Her blog actually is clearasmud.com, I think. And you may find it interesting. She's a Chabad Rebbetzin. I think that's what it is. I'll let you know if it is. I'll search it for you quickly to make sure that's what it is. But and she's really, nope, it's not. Let me find it. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to leave.
No, go. I know. I also have to leave.
See you guys, and I'll watch it later. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye, Lara.
Bye.
Bye, B. Bye-bye, Judith. Okay.
I'll find her blog. Let me find. Okay. Oh, it's claire'smud.blog. So I sent you the wrong link, but it is her. It is the username. I'm going to put it here so you can have it.
Thank you.
And okay, I think you'll find it interesting because I think that often in life we really do box ourselves in. I'm not enough of this, a wife, a sister, a friend, a mother, and we have to start trying to show up better for ourselves. And accepting that God has a plan for you. It's not a mistake. Your soul's not a mistake. You're here for a reason. And in Judaism, you know, we don't say you only count when you have children. We don't. Every soul has its own journey.
Yeah.
Because the God who created you with your story.
Yeah.
So how can he create you with your story and also want you to be something else?
Yeah. Yeah. But I definitely, I have a niece who I think wants, she keeps saying she wants to be a boy. And my thing is, I feel like you need to at least be 18 to make that type of decision.
Oh yeah, I would now. I mean, I'm not going to get political here, but I think a lot of it's coming from very unhealthy factors. It doesn't.
Yeah, her father.
Place.
I don't know. I guess her father, he left them, so I don't know if maybe she's having.
You know how often I've seen that? Do you know how often I've seen that? Where, yep, they want to fill exactly. But let's get the kid therapy because the kid needs help.
Mm.
But maybe you can show up in her life differently.
Yeah, and I mean, and one thing, you know, I thought about adopting, but with my cancer, I just worry.
I think keep yourself healthy. Okay?
Yeah.
Keep yourself healthy. That's priority number one. Adoption, whether be healthy.
Yeah, I guess my thing is always try to spread honesty and truth.
Yes.
Life.
And you know what? Can I add to the list? Kindness. You're clearly a very kind and compassionate person.
Sometimes I can be mean though on Twitter and stuff, so I need to work on that.
We all. Thank God you're human.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump off now. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much.